So how does a massive, bankrupt 1920s real estate disaster for the ultra-rich somehow accidentally transform into the most beloved public park in the world?
Well, mostly by having the infrastructure designed by a genius who completely refused to draw a straight line.
Right. Welcome to the Travel Podcast by ExcursionPass. We hear from listeners all the time that they love hanging out with us for these deep dives because we actually get ahead of your objections and your doubts
Yeah.
about these famous sites.
Yeah, we really try to be that, that couple of experts who have actually lived the experience on the ground. We want to share every single detail so it feels like you're right there walking the paths with us.
Exactly. And we like to have a little fun with it too, right?
Yeah.
Because travel should be fun, but we also know the drill. You see these glossy travel photos online. You imagine teleporting to the steps of this historical monument.
Perfect lighting.
Right. Perfect lighting, a gentle breeze, and of course you have the entire place to yourself.
And then you actually arrive in the middle of July. You're exhausted, you're lost, you're fighting these massive crowds, and you realize that experiencing a masterpiece actually takes physical work.
It totally does. So today we are doing what we do best. We are getting ahead of your logistical nightmares. Our mission for this deep dive is to synthesize a massive stack of source material.
A really massive stack.
Yeah, we're talking over 78,000 TripAdvisor reviews from travelers who are literally on the ground in the summer of 2026, alongside some really great insider details from an ExcursionPass private guided tour.
So we are pulling together the ultimate blueprint for understanding and, honestly, physically surviving Antoni Gaudi's architectural masterpiece, which is Park Güell in Barcelona.
Whether you're actively planning a trip to Spain, or you're just, an architecture buff who wants to know how a luxury housing project became a world-renowned space, this deep dive is going to save you time, money, and probably a lot of sweat.
Yeah, because we are going to look at the lofty, brilliant, artistic ideals of Gaudi, but we're going to crash those ideals right into the very real ground-level experiences of tourists navigating the site today.
Right, because you have to understand both the art and the infrastructure if you want to avoid a completely miserable afternoon.
Exactly.
So let's start by addressing what people think Park Güell actually is versus its actual historical origins. I mean, when you hear the phrase public park, you immediately picture like a civic green space.
Right, a place built by the city government.
Yeah, for people to walk their dogs, throw a frisbee, have a picnic.
Right.
But this project did not start as a public gift. It was supposed to be Billionaire's Row.
It was an incredibly exclusive vision. The park officially opened to the public in 1926, sure, but its origins are rooted in this highly ambitious residential garden city project.
Right.
The entrepreneur who commissioned Gaudi, this guy, Josep Güell, he wanted to build luxury homes away from the smog and noise of the industrial city center. So they secured land on Carmel Hill, up in the Gracia neighborhood.
Which is funny to think about now because today Gracia is this dense, super cool bohemian neighborhood right in the middle of Barcelona.
Yeah, but back in the late 19th century, Gracia was actually a completely independent town. It was basically the suburbs.
Oh, wow.
So Güell envisioned around 60 of these triangular plots for luxury villas. They were going to have modern amenities, gatehouses, a whole marketplace, and these sweeping elevated views of the Mediterranean Sea.
Okay, let's unpack this. If we translate this into modern terms, Park Güell is essentially a failed luxury gated community.
Pretty much, yeah.
The developer tries to build this exclusive enclave in the hills. He completely runs out of money, throws in the towel, and the city eventually just takes over the clubhouse and the landscaping to turn it into a public attraction.
That's exactly what happened. I mean, only 2 houses were ever actually built. It was a massive commercial failure. But what's fascinating here is that the quote-unquote clubhouse and landscaping were designed by Antoni Gaudi.
Right, the genius himself.
He didn't just bulldoze a hill to lay down flat roads, He used natural, organic forms to solve incredibly complex practical engineering problems.
Well, let's get specific on those engineering problems, because when you look at photos of the park, practical is literally the last word that comes to mind.
Oh, totally. It looks
It
wild.
looks like a fantasy land. It looks like a melting gingerbread village.
Yeah, but take the famous Hypostyle room, for example. It's also known as the Hall of 100 Columns, even though, fun fact, there are exactly 86 of them.
Naturally.
Visually, it looks like this magical, cavernous forest of massive stone pillars holding up the main plaza. But practically, it was designed to be the covered marketplace for those wealthy residents.
Okay.
And those columns aren't just solid stone supports. They're actually hollowed out to act as a massive internal drainage system.
Wait, really? The columns are pipes.
Essentially, yeah. When it rains, the water filters through the unpaved ground of the massive public plaza above it, drains down through the hollow core of those 86 columns, and then it empties into an underground cistern.
Wow.
And that cistern was designed to supply fresh water to the entire gated community.
So Gaudi built a rainwater harvesting system, but he disguised it as a monumental stone forest. I mean, the art is literally the plumbing.
It is. The engineering and the imagination are completely inseparable with him, and you see that exact same functional creativity in the visual signature of the park, which is the trencadis technique.
Ah, the broken tile mosaics. You see these on the famous salamander statue, El Drac, and wrapped all along the edges of that incredible serpentine bench overlooking the city.
Right, so Gaudi was designing structures with undulating, curving surfaces. He fundamentally believed there were no straight lines in nature, so he just refused to use them in his architecture.
That sounds like a nightmare for a builder.
It is, because you cannot tile a complex organic curve with a flat, rigid, square ceramic tile. It simply won't sit flush against the concrete.
So what do you do? Well, by intentionally breaking the tiles, which was a technique that was totally revolutionary at the time, he could mold this protective, colorful, waterproof skin over literally any bizarre shape he dreamed up.
He shattered the materials to make the math work on a curve. That is just brilliant.
It really is.
So Gaudi builds this highly functional, breezy oasis for the 1920s elite. But how does that century-old infrastructure actually hold up when you cram thousands of sweating tourists into it on a random Tuesday in July?
Yeah, that's where the story gets a little rough.
Because the 2026 TripAdvisor reviews paint a very different, much more painful picture of this place.
The contrast is honestly jarring. Look, the park maintains a very respectable 4.2 out of 5-star rating, and it ranks number 17 out of over 1,500 things to do in Barcelona.
Which is high?
Very high. But if you read the AI summary of recent summer reviews, the physical experience is frequently described as grueling.
And grueling is putting it mildly. Let's look at a review from a user named Susanna765. She visited in July 2026. She immediately warns everyone about the intense heat.
The Spanish sun is no joke.
Not at all. She points out that right after you enter, you are hit with a serious uphill climb of about 20 minutes, almost entirely in full sun.
Ugh, brutal.
Right, she was sweating, struggling, and to make matters worse, she said the staff on the ground were totally unhelpful.
Yeah, instead of handing out physical maps or, just giving her verbal directions, the staff just pointed her to a QR code to scan.
And anyone who has traveled recently knows this specific modern frustration. You are exhausted, the sun is glaring off your phone screen, and you scan a code that takes you to a vague, poorly optimized web page.
With like 2 blurry photos.
Exactly. Susanna said it was completely useless for actually navigating the winding, complicated dirt paths of the park. She also noted that the routing forces you to climb all the way up to the highest viewpoint first.
Right, meaning you are doing the absolute hardest physical labor before you even get to enjoy any of the art.
It just becomes a physical gauntlet. Look at the review from STB 545. They visited a month earlier, in June 2026.
Oh, I remember this one.
Yeah, they explicitly state that arriving at 11:30 a.m. is, and I quote, too late in all caps for the summer heat. By 12:30 p.m., after just 1 hour on the hill, they were so miserable they cut their visit short and left without even seeing the whole park.
Which is heartbreaking when you travel that far.
It is. They took responsibility for booking late, to be fair, but they made it abundantly clear that Carmel Hill in the midday sun will break you.
It absolutely will.
So I just have to ask, if the logistics are an absolute nightmare and you're sweating halfway up a mountain, the staff isn't helping, you're squinting at a bad digital map, and you're literally at risk of heat stroke.
Yeah.
Why is this place still pulling in thousands of 5-star reviews? I mean, what is keeping people from just walking away? Is a mosaic lizard really worth heat stroke?
I know it sounds crazy, but it's the sheer overwhelming power of the visual payoff. Reviewer Go Along 2 captured this dynamic perfectly in their 5-star review.
What did they say?
They described the winding paths, the viaducts, and the architecture as feeling like they came straight out of a children's storybook. It's just full of these curving, organic shapes.
So when you finally reach that massive serpentine bench wrapped in those vibrant broken tiles, and you look out over the whimsical gatehouses,
with the entire city of Barcelona stretching out to the Mediterranean Sea right behind them,
it creates this profound cognitive dissonance. Your body is telling you that you are hot, tired, and frustrated, but your eyes are telling you that you've just stepped into a masterpiece.
Exactly. The art is undeniably brilliant, even if the modern tourist infrastructure is punishing.
The payoff is real, but the pain is real too. And honestly, nobody wants to be the person bailing at 12:30 p.m. just because they didn't plan ahead.
Definitely not.
So let's pull out the actionable intelligence here. This is the ultimate hacking guide to Park Güell, drawn directly from the reviewers who actually successfully beat the system.
Okay, the first rule is absolute. Do not assume you can just walk up and buy a ticket at the gate. Reviewer Arzazet noted that even showing up early in the morning, tickets were completely sold out for the entire day. People were literally being turned away at the gates after walking all the way up the hill.
That is soul-crushing.
Yeah.
Reviewer 543 Daniel Dren insists you need to buy your tickets months in advance. You have to treat it like a highly anticipated concert, right? Lock it down before you even pack your bags.
Good advice. Then there is the transportation trap. A lot of tourists rely on those open-top, hop-on, hop-off buses to get around Barcelona.
Which are usually great.
They are, but Susanna765 pointed out a massive flaw with that strategy for this specific site. Those massive double-decker buses cannot navigate the narrow, winding streets up Carmel Hill, so they don't even go to the park entrance.
Oh, wait, so where do they drop you?
They drop you at the bottom of the neighborhood. Susanna said she watched hordes of tourists get off that premium bus only to realize they had an extra 20-minute uphill hike in the blazing heat just to reach the starting line.
Ouch. So what's the workaround?
Seasoned travelers know to use the regular Barcelona city buses or just grab a taxi. They can navigate the smaller streets and drop you directly at the gates.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. Treating a park visit like a military operation is literally the only way to actually enjoy the art. And the absolute best tip, the ultimate hack for saving your legs, comes from reviewer Stuart Rock.
That's a great one.
He left a 5-star review, but his main piece of advice was incredibly simple. He just wrote, enter at the top and walk down. Like 3 exclamation points.
If you look at the park's geography, that is the ultimate game changer. The entire park is built on a steep incline, right?
Right.
So if you enter at the bottom, near the main gatehouses, you are fighting gravity the entire time, hiking up to the viewpoints.
Sweating the whole way.
Exactly. But if you take a taxi or a specific local bus to the upper entrances, you can just casually stroll downhill. You let gravity do the work, and you finish your tour at the monumental zone with the lizard and the gatehouses.
It's just about working with the geography instead of fighting it. You walk down the winding dirt paths, you enjoy the shade of the viaducts, rather than gasping for air on a huge incline.
It changes the whole vibe of the day.
Totally. Oh, and one more quick hack for the perfect photo. Reviewer Ardo Zet says to head up to the 3 Crosses Monument. It's the highest point in the park, and from there, you get this incredible, unobstructed shot with the Sagrada Familia towering in the distance.
It's those specific navigational details that transform a frustrating visit into a seamless one.
For sure.
But, you know, even with all these logistical hacks, even if you buy your ticket early, you take a taxi to the top, and you walk downhill, you still face a fundamental problem once you're actually inside.
What's that?
You are surrounded by all this bizarre, beautiful architecture, but what does it actually mean? Which brings us to the ultimate question for any traveler. To guide or not to guide?
That is the big question. You can bypass the lines, but if you don't know what you're looking at, are you really getting the value? We really need to weigh the options here.
Let's do it.
We have this ExcursionPass private guided tour, which runs about €250.
Yeah.
And we need to weigh that against a completely scathing 1-star review from a user named Edlin.
Okay, well, let's look at the tour first. The ExcursionPass tour is a 75-minute private experience. The immediate logistical benefit is for your sanity.
Absolutely.
But the real value proposition is translation. As the tour materials point out, without context, the park just looks like random decoration. A guide decodes the symbols.
Right.
They explain the Modernisme context. They break down that trencadis technique while you were standing right in front of El Drac. And they show you how Gaudi balanced his religious beliefs with his love for Catalan's civic identity.
I hear that, and it sounds amazing. But if I'm looking at my travel budget, €250 is a massive investment.
It is a lot of money, yeah.
And this is where Edlin's 1-star review from June 2026 makes you pause. She is furious. She wrote in all caps, "Do not go, do not pay, it is not worth it."
She really did not mince words.
Not at all. She literally calls it a simple park with some small mosaics.
Yeah.
She argues that the absolute best part of the experience is just the view of the city skyline, which you can get for free by just walking around the perimeter paths outside the paid zone.
Okay, that's a valid point about the free paths.
Right. On top of that, she was really angry that parts of the park were under repair, the historic Trias house was closed, and the on-site museum requires a totally separate entrance fee.
Yeah.
If I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, why drop 250 euros on a private tour if the site is just an overpriced tourist trap under construction?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, Edlin's review perfectly highlights the danger of experiencing a place like Park Güell purely on a surface level.
What do you mean?
If you are going strictly for a pleasant walk and a nice view of the Barcelona skyline, Edlin is actually right. Don't pay for the ticket. Don't fight the crowds. Just stay on the free perimeter trails.
Save your money.
Exactly. But she called it a simple park with small mosaics. That tells us she fundamentally lacked the context to understand the language of the space.
So what is she missing, though?
Yeah.
What is the translation she didn't get? The tour pitch mentions modernism. You hear that word a lot in Barcelona, but when I look at the park, it doesn't look like any imism I ever studied in art history.
Right.
What is the actual definition here?
It defies traditional art history labels because it's hyper-local. Modernism wasn't just an architectural style. It was a late 19th and early 20th century Catalan cultural renaissance.
Okay.
It was this big push to modernize Barcelona while intensely celebrating local Catalan identity and explicitly rejecting the cold, straight lines of industrial mass production.
And Gaudi was at the center of that.
He was at the absolute forefront of it. He believed that nature was God's perfect architecture, which is why there are no straight lines in the park.
See, here's where it gets really interesting. How does that lofty philosophy translate to the actual physical things you see on the ground? Let's take that famous mosaic lizard Eldrac. Edlin sees a cute, tiled amphibian. What did Gaudi see?
Well, first off, it's not just a lizard, it's a salamander, which carries deep alchemical and mythological symbolism representing fire.
Oh,
But in the context of the park, it's placed right on the staircase, acting as the guardian of the underground waters, tying right back to that cistern in the hypostyle room we talked about earlier.
the rainwater harvesting.
Exactly. And look at the colors. The prominent use of yellow and red in those broken mosaics isn't just a random cheerful palette. Those are the specific colors of the Senyera, the Catalan flag.
So in one single statue on a staircase, you have functional plumbing, mythological symbolism, and a massive, vibrant billboard for Catalan civic pride.
Yes. And let's look at the Three Crosses monument at the top of the hill, the one recommended for the best photos.
Right, the highest point.
Gaudi originally planned to build a chapel on that exact spot for the residents. When the real estate development failed and the chapel was scrapped, he built a monument modeled after the Caves of Calvary.
That's fascinating.
He infused his intense Catholicism into the highest physical point of the park, overlooking the city and pointing directly toward his ultimate, all-consuming obsession, which was the Sagrada Familia.
See, that entirely reframes the experience. If you walk past that monument without a guide or without doing the reading, you just see a pile of rocks and a great angle for your Instagram.
Exactly.
You don't see the religious devotion. You don't see the civic pride. She just saw broken tiles, not an engineering and cultural marvel.
Which is why the guided experience, or committing to serious personal research before you go, is absolutely vital. You are paying for the translation of a masterpiece.
It makes sense.
Furthermore, her complaint about construction scaffolding completely ignores the reality of maintaining a 100-year-old experimental site. The upkeep of trencadis requires constant, painstaking restoration to survive millions of visitors a year.
That's a really fair point. So, bringing this all together, if you want to conquer Park Güell, you have to respect the reality of the location.
The essential takeaways are clear. Logistics first. Book your tickets weeks, if not months, in advance. Second, beat the heat. Go very early in the morning or late in the afternoon, especially if you're there in the summer.
Third, hack the geography. Do not take the hop-on, hop-off bus to the bottom of the hill. Take a city bus or a taxi to the upper entrances, enter from the top, and walk downhill. Let gravity be your friend.
And finally, secure the context. Whether you invest in an ExcursionPass private guided tour to skip the lines and get those personalized insights, or you dedicate time to study the history yourself, just do not go in blind.
Right.
Ensure you have the context so you aren't just exhausted, sweating, and wondering what all the hype is actually about.
Because understanding this doesn't just prepare you for a trip to Barcelona. It prepares you to realize how historical context completely changes our experience of art. When you know why something was built, the physical reality of what you're looking at becomes so much more powerful.
It changes everything. It turns a frustrating walk up a hot dirt path into an incredible journey through a genius's imagination.
Which leaves us with a final thought to mull over. We started this deep dive by talking about how Park Güell was essentially a massive commercial failure.
Right.
It was a luxury real estate project for the ultra-wealthy that went completely bust, only to be repurposed into one of the world's most treasured, heavily visited public spaces.
The ultimate pivot, really.
It really is. So look around your own city today. Look at the half-finished developments, the abandoned shopping malls, the stalled commercial projects that we currently consider modern eyesores.
Yeah.
If a failed billionaire's row from the 1920s could transform into a priceless cultural treasure, what modern failures around us right now might be deeply cherished, protected, and celebrated by future generations.
That is a fascinating way to look at the urban landscape.
Something to think about the next time you drive past a stalled construction site. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive on the travel podcast by ExcursionPass. We'll catch you on the next one.